The night was dark, and the storm was cruel. The wind howled like a hungry beast, and snow covered the land like a white ocean. The frozen world was dangerous, and no one sane would walk outside in such deadly weather. But a man was walking. A single human, wrapped in a heavy survival suit, moved slowly through the storm. His boots sank deep into the snow, and every step was painful. The cold cut into his bones, but he kept moving. His name was Daniel, a traveler who had learned long ago that survival meant never stopping. Daniel's breath fogged inside his helmet. The snow whipped against his visor, making it hard to see. He was far away from Earth, far away from home, living on an alien planet that wanted to kill him every hour of the day. Yet he survived because humans had a strange gift. They refused to give up. Suddenly, he stopped. His ears caught something strange, something that did not belong to the storm. At first, he thought it was only the wind. But then he heard it again, a sound, faint and broken. A voice. Daniel froze. His heart started to beat faster. Was someone else alive out here? He turned his head, trying to listen through the roar of the blizzard. Help. The word was weak, almost swallowed by the wind, but it was there. Human ears were not made for this storm, but Daniel was sure he had heard it. He narrowed his eyes and moved toward the sound. Step by step, he pushed forward, the snow rising to his knees. The voice came again, desperate and thin, like someone drowning under ice. Please, help us. Daniel's instincts screamed at him. This was dangerous. Maybe it was a trap. Maybe his mind was playing tricks in the storm, but he could not ignore it. He had lived alone on this planet for too long. He knew the sound of true desperation. He dropped to his knees and brushed away snow with his gloved hands. At first, he saw nothing but endless white. Then he noticed a faint glow under the ice. His eyes widened. Something or someone was buried beneath. Daniel dug faster, his hands burning from cold. The snow was thick, heavy, like a prison. His gloves tore on the sharp ice, but he did not stop. Finally, his hand touched something warm. Not human, not metal, something alive. He pulled harder, and the snow gave way. Two figures were trapped under the frozen weight. They were not human. They were alien. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The figures were shaped like women, but their skin was pale blue, glowing faintly in the darkness. Their hair shimmered like silver, and their eyes, half closed with weakness, glowed softly as they looked at him. They were sisters, two alien girls, lying close together, shivering violently. Their thin clothes were torn, and frost covered their skin. They were dying. Daniel's mind raced. He had seen many strange things on this planet, but never creatures like these. His heart told him to save them, but his survival training screamed danger. Unknown life forms can kill you. One of the sisters reached out, her hand trembling. Her fingers, long and delicate, wrapped weakly around his wrist. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Don't leave us." For a moment, Daniel hesitated. His life was already hanging by a thread. If he carried them, if they were dangerous, he might not survive the night. But then he saw their faces, full of fear, lips turning blue from the cold. They were not monsters. They were victims. Something inside Daniel stirred. He remembered his own past, the long nights when he had almost frozen, the times he had wished someone would save him. Now he was the only one who could save them. Without another thought, he pulled them free from the snow. Their bodies were light, fragile, as if the storm had stolen all their strength. He wrapped them in his thermal blanket, holding them close to his chest to share what little warmth he had. The sisters clung to him, whispering in a language he could barely understand. But the meaning was clear. They were begging for life. Daniel stood up, the storm beating against him harder than before. He could barely see his own shelter through the wall of snow. Each step forward was like climbing a mountain, but he kept going. The weight of 2 lives pressed against him. But his determination burned brighter than the cold. The sisters' glowing eyes stayed on him, wide and full of hope. To them, this strange human was not just a man in the storm. He was salvation. And as the storm raged around them, Daniel realized something. This night was not only about survival. Something bigger had begun. The snowstorm was only the first trial. The real story was just starting. The storm outside roared like a monster. But inside Daniel's small shelter, silence ruled. Only the faint sound of breathing and weak whispers broke the quiet. The 2 alien sisters lay near the heater, wrapped in blankets he had almost torn apart to keep them warm. Daniel sat on the floor, his hands shaking not only from cold, but from confusion. He had saved many things in his life, his own supplies, his broken equipment. Even his small memories of Earth, but never to strange beings who looked like angels made of ice. The firelight flickered across their faces. Their blue skin glowed softly, as if they carried starlight in their veins. Frost still clung to their hair, but slowly it melted, turning into drops of silver water. Daniel stared at them, half in awe, half in fear. One of the sisters opened her eyes. They were glowing white, like frozen moons. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Warm, safe." The sound was broken, but Daniel understood enough. "She was alive. Don't move," Daniel said gently. "You're safe now." The second sister stirred. She coughed, weak and harsh, then pulled herself closer to her sibling. Her eyes fixed on Daniel, and for a moment he thought she would scream. But instead, she only whispered, "Thank you." "Human," Daniel blinked. "They know what I am." The sisters shivered, curling together under the blanket. He could feel their bodies were light, fragile, not built for such brutal cold. He poured a small cup of heated water and held it near the shy one, the younger sister. At first, she hesitated, but when the steam touched her lips, she drank greedily. The older sister's voice was stronger now. "We almost died," she whispered, her accent sharp but her words clear enough. "You pulled us from death." Daniel's instincts stirred again. He had saved them, yes. But who were they? Were they harmless victims or something else? He had no answers. "You shouldn't even be here," Daniel said quietly. "This planet eats everything alive." "Why were you out in the storm?" The sisters exchanged a look, one full of secrets. The younger one lowered her gaze, her eyes full of sadness. The older answered, "Our ship, broken. Hunters chased us. We crashed. Snow prison. Then, you came." Daniel frowned. Hunters. That single word carried danger. He wanted to ask more, but their weakness was clear. This was not the time. Instead, he checked the heater. The storm outside screamed against the walls, but the warmth inside held. He brought out a small pack of dried food, simple human rations. He broke one piece and offered it. The younger sister sniffed it, then took a cautious bite. Her eyes widened. Strange, but good. The faintest smile touched her lips. For a moment, Daniel almost laughed. It had been months since he had seen a smile. In this frozen world, smiles were rarer than sunlight. As the hours passed, the sisters' breathing grew stronger. Their trembling slowed, and their skin lost its icy blue paleness. They stayed close together, always touching, like 2 halves of one heart. But their eyes never left Daniel. Sometimes they whispered to each other in a language of soft clicks and flowing tones. The words meant nothing to Daniel, but the way they looked at him spoke louder than any language. It was not fear anymore, it was trust. The older sister finally said, "Human, you gave life back to us, our people. Believe that debt must be paid. Daniel shook his head. I didn't do it for a debt. I did it because it was the right thing. Her glowing eyes studied him carefully. Strange human, she whispered. Others would walk away, but you stayed. He didn't answer. Deep inside, he knew she was right. Survival usually meant looking out for yourself, but he couldn't walk away from voices in the storm. Maybe that made him weak. Or maybe it made him more human than ever. The sisters leaned against each other, finally drifting into sleep. Their silver hair shone faintly in the dim firelight. Their breaths slow and calm. Daniel sat awake, his hand resting on the edge of his old rifle. The storm outside was not the only danger. If their words were true, if hunters were out there, then saving them might have invited death to his very door. But as he watched them sleep, something inside him refused to regret it. For the first time in years, his shelter was not silent. The cold night was broken by life, by the fragile warmth of two beings who should not have survived. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of Earth, of old memories, of faces long gone. Maybe, just maybe, fate had brought him something more than survival tonight. The storm still raged. But inside the shelter, a fragile bond had been born, and outside, hidden in the snow, shadows were already moving. When morning came, the storm finally grew weaker. The walls of Daniel's shelter creaked as the wind slowed and light pushed through the frozen cracks. The world outside was still dangerous, but inside, warmth had survived the night. The sisters stirred under the blanket. Their breathing was stronger now, no longer broken by the cold. Daniel watched quietly as their eyes opened, glowing like white fire under pale skin. He had seen many strange creatures since coming to this planet, things with claws, fangs, and endless hunger. But never had he seen anything like them. They were not beasts. They were not monsters. They were beautiful. Their faces were smooth, their features sharp but gentle, almost human, yet not. Their skin carried a faint glow, as if light itself lived inside them. Their silver hair fell across their shoulders, catching the firelight like strands of glass. Even their voices, soft and trembling, felt like music against the silence. The younger one looked at Daniel with wide eyes full of wonder. She whispered something in her own tongue, then hid her face behind her sister's arm. The older one gave a faint smile and translated. She says, "She has never seen a human before." Daniel blinked, "And I've never seen." "Whatever you are." The older sister tilted her head. "We are Lyrons, a people of light. We live far from here, in a place where snow never touches the ground." Her voice carried pride, but also sadness. Daniel nodded slowly. "Lyrons," he repeated. The name sounded strange on his tongue. "And you too are." The older one placed a hand on her chest. "I am Cerise." Then she touched the shoulder of her shy sister. "This is Lyra." Lyra peeked out for only a second, her glowing eyes curious but shy. She looked no older than a young woman, though her aura carried something ancient, something deep. Daniel leaned back, trying to process everything. Two alien sisters, lost in a storm, calling themselves Lyrons. If it weren't for their trembling bodies and exhausted faces, he might have thought he was dreaming. Cerise watched him closely. "You saved us, Daniel," she said, speaking his name as if it were heavy with meaning. No Loren would walk into such danger for strangers. "Why did you?" Daniel hesitated. The question was simple, yet heavy. "Because I couldn't leave you there. Not when you were begging for life." Lyra whispered again, this time braver. "Strange. Human heart." Her words made Cirrus nod. "Yes, strange, but noble." Daniel almost laughed, but stopped himself. They spoke of him as if he were some kind of legend. but he was no hero. He was just a man trying to survive another day. The sisters slowly sat up, their bodies weak, but no longer shaking. Their glowing eyes searched the small shelter, studying everything with childlike curiosity: the heater, the broken metal walls, even Daniel's old rifle leaning against the corner. Lyra touched it gently, then pulled her hand back quickly, as if the cold weapon carried hidden teeth. "You live here?" "Alone?" Cerise asked. Daniel nodded. "It's not much, but it keeps me alive." Cerise frowned. "Alone. Always." The word struck Daniel deeper than he expected. He had lived years in silence, speaking only to himself, listening only to storms. He had forgotten how it felt to share space with someone else. "Yes," he answered finally. "Always." Lyra's eyes softened. For the first time, she reached toward him not out of fear, but out of quiet gratitude. Her glowing fingers brushed his glove. "Not anymore," she whispered. The words hung in the air, warmer than the heater itself. Daniel looked at the two sisters, and for a strange moment, the frozen shelter did not feel like a cage anymore. It felt alive, but the feeling did not last. Cerise's face grew serious again. "You must understand, Daniel. Our being here is dangerous. The hunters who chased us, they will come again." Daniel's eyes hardened. "Hunters?" Cerise nodded slowly. "They destroyed our ship. They want us because of who we are." Daniel leaned forward. "And who are you?" The sisters exchanged a heavy glance. Lyra lowered her head, as if afraid. Cerise finally answered. "We are daughters of the High Lyran house. Our bloodline carries power. That is why they will never stop." Daniel's mind spun. He had thought they were just lost travelers. But now he realized he had saved more than two strangers. He had saved royalty. The storm outside had ended, but Daniel knew a greater storm was coming. And somehow he was standing right at the center of it. The sisters' glowing eyes stayed fixed on him, full of trust and something more strange, beautiful, and now bound to him in ways he could not yet understand. The storm outside had passed, but inside Daniel's shelter, a new storm was beginning, quiet, invisible, and powerful. It was not made of snow or wind. It was made of feelings. The sisters were recovering. Their faces, once pale with frost, now carried color again. Their glowing skin seemed warmer, their silver hair softer, no longer stiff with ice. Daniel gave them food, water, and warmth. But he gave them something more: his presence. For the first time in years, he was not alone. Lyra, the younger sister, followed him with her eyes wherever he moved. When Daniel adjusted the heater or fixed the broken walls, she watched with deep curiosity. She asked small questions in broken English. "Why? Live here? No people. Only you." Daniel paused. "Yes, only me." Lyra frowned. "Sad, cold. Not only outside. Cold here." She touched her chest. Her words cut deeper than the wind ever had. Daniel had no answer, so he only gave a tired smile. Cerise, the older sister, was different. She was sharper, her gaze strong. She studied Daniel not like a curious child, but like a leader weighing a choice. She asked harder questions. "You risked your life for us. Why, you say it is the right thing. But humans are rare here. Few would choose death for strangers." Daniel met her eyes. "Because no one deserves to die alone under the snow. Not you, not anyone." For a moment, Cerise did not reply. Her glowing eyes softened, just slightly. Then she looked away. But not before Daniel saw something new in her expression. Respect as hours turned into a day. The silence of the shelter changed. It was no longer heavy and empty. Now it carried small sounds: Lyra's laughter, when Daniel's old stove smoked too much. Ceres humming in her strange Lyran tongue as she cleaned her sister's hair. The quiet questions they asked about Earth. Your home. What is it like? Ceres asked. Daniel leaned back, eyes distant. It's blue, with wide oceans and green forests. Warm sun. People everywhere. Families, cities that shine at night. Lyra gasped softly. Sounds beautiful. Daniel nodded. It was, but it's far. Too far. His voice cracked with a weight they both felt. Ceres studied him again. And yet, you carry Earth inside you. In your words, in your heart. Daniel didn't reply. But deep inside, he felt something shift. Later, while Daniel checked his supplies, Lyra crawled closer. She held out her glowing hand. Human hands. Strange, hard, strong. She traced the scars on his knuckles with wonder. Daniel chuckled. That's from work. Fighting the world just to live another day. Lyra's voice softened. But these hands pulled us from death, gave us life. They are kind. Her innocent words stirred something Daniel hadn't felt in years' warmth. Not from fire, but from connection. When Ceres saw her sister holding his hand, her eyes narrowed for a moment. Not in anger, but in thought. She did not stop Lyra. She only watched, silent, her face unreadable. That night, the three of them sat together. The heater's glow painted their faces, and for the first time since his arrival on this frozen world, Daniel felt something like home. Lyra leaned against him lightly, her silver hair brushing his arm. Ceres sat on the other side, her gaze calm but steady, as if she were guarding both her sister and Daniel at once. You are not like other humans, Ceres said suddenly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You've only met one human. Me? Yes, she said firmly. And that is enough. Lyra nodded eagerly. Yes, you are. Special. Daniel laughed softly. I'm just a man trying not to freeze to death. But the sisters shook their heads. To them, he was more. Much more. In the quiet hours before sleep, Daniel found himself staring at the two sisters resting close together. They were strange, yes, alien, but in their presence he no longer felt the crushing silence that had haunted him for years. He felt alive, yet at the edge of this new warmth, danger still waited. Ceres's earlier words echoed in his mind. Hunters. They will come again. Daniel knew the storm had only given them a short peace. Soon, someone or something would come searching for these sisters. And when that happened, his small shelter would no longer be enough. Still, as Lyra's hand rested lightly on his arm and Ceres's watchful eyes slowly closed, Daniel made a silent promise. Whatever danger came, whatever the cost, he would not let them be taken, not after saving them. Not after seeing the strange, beautiful bond that had already begun to grow. The shelter had become warm, almost peaceful. Daniel had almost forgotten the storm, almost forgotten the silence of his old life. But peace never lasted long on this frozen planet. It began with a sound. At first, Daniel thought it was only the wind returning. But then he heard it again, sharp, heavy, deliberate footsteps. He froze. No one should be near his shelter. No one, except. Then Daniel grabbed his rifle and moved to the window slit he had cut long ago. Outside, shadows moved across the snow. Figures, tall and armed, their armor glowing faintly against the pale ice. There were at least 5 of them, maybe more. Moving with the slow patience of predators, his heart tightened. Hunters behind him, Lyra stirred. Her glowing eyes widened as she saw his face. They come, she whispered, her voice trembling. Ceres stood quickly, her body still weak, but her spirit sharp. She pressed a hand against the wall as if to steady herself. Daniel, listen, they will not stop. They are here for us. Daniel turned to her, jaw tight. Then we don't let them in. Ceresa's expression was hard, but her eyes glowed with respect. You would fight for us. Daniel checked the chamber of his rifle. I didn't pull you out of the snow just to hand you over. The hunters spread out, moving in a half circle toward the shelter. Their helmets gleamed, their weapons long and sharp, made for killing. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run, to hide, but there was nowhere to go. This was his world, his shelter, his fight. He quickly laid out traps he had built over the years, hidden wires under the snow. Old explosives buried in the ice, sharp metal shards ready to strike. They were crude, human-made from scraps, but Daniel knew how to use them. Lyra grabbed his arm, her voice shaking. Too many. You can't win. Daniel looked at her, his voice calm but firm. I don't need to win. I just need to protect you long enough. She blinked, her glowing eyes filling with tears. Cerise stood behind her sister, her face unreadable. But Daniel could feel her silent agreement. The first shot came like thunder. A blast of blue energy ripped across the shelter, burning a hole through the wall. Daniel ducked, pulling Lyra down with him. Ceres moved quickly, shielding her sister with her own body. The hunters shouted in their strange tongue, voices full of hunger and rage. Daniel crawled to the firing slit and aimed. He pulled the trigger. The rifle kicked, and one hunter dropped into the snow. The others snarled, returning fire. The battle began. The ground shook as Daniel's old traps exploded. 2 hunters were caught in the blast, their armor torn apart. Shards of ice and fire lit the night, painting the snow red. But still, more came. Daniel fought with everything he had. Each bullet, each step, each breath was survival. He moved with the skill of a man who had fought the planet itself for years. But this was different. This was not survival for himself. This was survival for them. Lyra cried out as a blast tore through the shelter wall. She reached out her hands, and for the first time, Daniel saw at her power. A wave of pale light burst from her, creating a shield that bent the energy away. She collapsed after, weak but alive. Cerese's eyes burned like fire. She stood, raising her hand, and the air itself seemed to freeze. Ice formed like spears, striking one of the hunters down. Her body shook with the effort, but her will did not break. Daniel stared for only a moment. The sisters were not helpless. They were powerful, but even power had limits. The hunters regrouped, angry now, more careful. They moved in pairs, firing in bursts. Daniel's traps were almost gone, his rifle nearly empty. His breath came in sharp gasps. His body screamed in pain. One hunter broke through the wall, charging inside. Daniel met him head-on, swinging the rifle like a club. They crashed together, fists and weapons in the dark. Daniel's strength came not from power, but from desperation. With a final strike, he brought the hunter down. But in that moment, another blast ripped across the room. Daniel turned too late. The energy struck him in the chest, throwing him against the wall. The world spun. His vision blurred. He tasted blood. Lyra screamed his name, rushing to his side. Ceres stood in front of them, her body glowing with icy light, her voice fierce. You will not take him. Outside, the hunters hesitated. They had expected weak prey. Instead, they had found a human who refused to break, and 2 sisters whose blood carried fire and ice. The night was not yet decided. But Daniel knew one thing. This fight was only beginning. The shelter was broken. Smoke and ice filled the air. Sparks jumped from the heater, and the walls shook under every blast. Daniel lay against the wall, his chest burning where the energy shot had struck him. His breath was ragged, but his eyes stayed open. He would not close them. Not yet. Lyra knelt beside him, tears shining in her glowing eyes. "Daniel, don't leave." Her small hands pressed against his chest as if her touch alone could keep him alive. Cerise stood tall, her silver hair wild, her eyes like burning frost. She faced the hunters with the calm of a warrior queen. "You will not take us," she said, her voice like ice breaking across a river. The hunters laughed, their helmets flashing in the firelight. They thought they had already won, but Daniel forced himself to his feet. His body screamed, his vision blurred, but his will held strong. "We fight together," he growled. The hunters moved as a pack, their weapons ready. Daniel lifted his rifle, even though it was almost empty. He fired anyway, his bullets sharp and precise. One hunter dropped into the snow. Lyra raised her hands again. Light burst from her palms, forming a shimmering shield around Daniel. Energy blasts slammed into it, bending and breaking. The strain made her body shake, but she did not stop. Cirrus struck next. With a single motion, ice leaped from the ground, forming sharp spears that pierced through armor. Another hunter fell, frozen in place like a statue of death. The sisters' powers lit up the night, painting the battlefield with fire and ice. And in the center of it, Daniel fought with raw human strength, his hands bloody, his rifle heavy, his spirit unbroken. The hunters were stronger, faster, better armed. But Daniel had something they did not understand. He had human defiance. He refused to let go. He refused to surrender. One hunter rushed at him, swinging a blade of blue energy. Daniel blocked with the butt of his rifle, sparks flying as the weapon cracked. He countered with a punch, his fist breaking against armor but forcing the hunter back. Another blast came. Lyra's shield caught it, but the force threw her to the ground. She cried out, her body weak, her energy fading. "Lyra!" Cirrus shouted, her eyes blazing. She unleashed a storm of ice, shards spinning like knives, cutting through two hunters at once. Her power was fierce, but it drained her, making her stagger. Daniel grabbed Lyra and pulled her close. "Stay with me," he said. His voice was rough, but steady. Lyra looked at him, her lips trembling. "I trust you." Those 3 words gave him strength. The hunters regrouped, now fewer, but more furious. They circled like wolves, weapons glowing in the dark. The leader stepped forward, taller, stronger, his armor black and cruel. His voice boomed. "The sisters belong to us. Human. Stand aside." Daniel spat blood on the snow. Not a chance. The leader raised his weapon. "Then you die." The final clash began. Daniel charged first, a roar tearing from his throat. He tackled one hunter, driving a broken blade into its chest. Another came at him from behind, but Cerise froze the ground beneath its feet, locking it in place. Daniel finished it with a single strike. Lyra, though weak, lifted her hands one last time. A wave of light spread out, blinding the hunters, giving Daniel and Cerise a moment to strike. The leader broke through the light, swinging his blade at Cerise. She blocked with a wall of ice, but the blade shattered it, the force throwing her back. Daniel lunged forward, grabbing the leader's arm. They wrestled in the snow, man against monster, strength against power. The leader's blade hissed inches from Daniel's face. With a final desperate cry, Daniel drove his broken rifle into the leader's chest. The armor cracked, the weapon pierced, and the hunter fell. The battlefield went silent. Daniel collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. His body was broken, but his spirit still burned. Around him lay the hunters, defeated, their blood staining the snow. Cirrus dragged herself to his side, her face pale, but her eyes shining with fierce pride. "You fought like 10 men," she whispered. Lyra crawled closer, her hands trembling as she touched his face. "You saved us again." Daniel gave a weak smile. "No, we saved each other." The storm outside was gone. The hunters were dead, but the bond between them had grown stronger than any weapon. And as the sisters held him, Daniel realized the fight was not only about survival. It was about something greater, something that was only beginning. The battlefield was silent now. Only the soft crackle of fire from broken weapons and the faint whistle of wind across the snow remained. The hunters were gone, their bodies scattered like shadows that had lost their power. Daniel sat slumped against the shelter wall, blood staining his chest, his breaths heavy but steady. He had fought with everything he had, and somehow he was still alive. Lyra knelt at his side, her glowing hands pressed against his wounds, tears sliding down her silver cheeks. "Don't leave us, Daniel, please. Don't." Cerise stood nearby, her proud figure now softened by exhaustion. Her eyes, usually sharp and unshaken, were filled with something new fear. Not fear of the hunters. Fear of losing the man who had risked everything for them. Daniel looked at them both, his voice low and rough. "You're safe now. That's what matters." But Cerise shook her head. "No, that is not enough. You saved us twice. You fought for us as if our lives were your own. Do you know what that means to our people?" Daniel frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" Lyra's voice was soft but sure. "In Lyran law, to save a life is to share a life." Daniel blinked. "Share a life." Ceres stepped closer, her glowing eyes locked on him. "Among our kind, when someone gives everything to protect us, he becomes part of our family. Not just a protector. Not just a friend. More." Daniel's breath caught. He could barely sit upright, yet their words hit harder than the battle. "You mean marriage?" The sisters looked at him, their silence speaking louder than words. Lyra, shy but brave, took his hand. "Yes, we belong to you now. And you belong to us." Daniel's mind spun. He had lived years alone, thinking survival was all that remained for him. Now, two alien sisters, glowing like stars, were offering him something he never expected: love, family, belonging. "But both of you?" he asked, half in disbelief, half in wonder. Lyra squeezed his hand gently. "We are sisters. We share everything. We share you too." Ceres nodded firmly. "Our bond is not broken by this. It is strengthened. You are our savior, Daniel. You are our choice." Daniel stared at them, his heart racing. He thought of Earth, of human traditions, of love that was simple and singular. This was different, strange, but as he looked into their glowing eyes, he felt no fear, only warmth. For years, he had fought against silence. For years, he had told himself he did not need anyone. But here, in this frozen wasteland, he had found what he never knew he was searching for. He closed his eyes, a faint smile on his lips. "You two are crazy." Lyra leaned closer, her voice a whisper. "Then we are crazy together." Ceres placed her hand on his shoulder, her expression steady. "Do you accept us, Daniel? Do you accept this bond?" He looked at them, both two alien sisters who had been strangers only days ago. Now bound to him by survival, by blood, by something greater than either of their worlds. Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, I accept." Lyra let out a soft laugh of joy, pressing her forehead gently against his. Ceres allowed the smallest smile to cross her lips, rare and beautiful. For a moment, the cold world outside felt far away. The storm had ended. The hunters were gone. But a new journey was beginning. That night, they sat together in the broken shelter. Daniel's wounds were bandaged, the sisters resting close to him. Lyra leaned against his arm, her silver hair brushing his skin. Ceres sat at his other side, calm and watchful, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. For the first time, Daniel was not a lone survivor. He was not just a man fighting against the cold. He was something more. The sisters had chosen him, and he had chosen them. Yet, as sleep finally claimed his tired body, one thought lingered in his mind. If hunters wanted the sisters this badly, more would come. The fight was not over. But this time, Daniel would not face it alone.